Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. So much to talk about today. Lots of things trending, and this is a focus on the housing industry, one of the hottest topics in the country right now as we head into 2026. Prices, interest rates, the inventory, affordability, everybody is feeling the impact of the housing situation. Whether you're considering on buying, selling, renting, we are going to talk with somebody who's got her finger on the pulse of that and everything legal related. What's love? Oh, I did want to say that. What's law got to do with it? But I love having her on here. She is fantastic. She's a partner at Greenspoon, Marder, LLP, and she is our professional of the year. Carol Sigmond is back. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Steve. How are you?
Real good. A little concerned about what may be coming our way in terms of the housing market. There's so much to talk about here. Where should we begin? What are you feeling?
Well, unfortunately, I think we have to start with all of the things you mentioned, the interest rates and the cost of construction, the labor force, all of the things that feed into housing. But let's start by, sort of stepping back a little bit and understanding a bit of what's going on sort of at a macro level before we dive in a little bit more micro. So macro, we've been in a period of rising prices, primarily due to the tariffs. They have hit construction materials particularly hard because we import plywood, cement, steel, things like that, all of which are important in construction and including in housing construction. We've been through the sort of DOGE process where a number of housing grant programs have been canceled. The projections from the National Coalition of Homelessness is that another 168,000 families will be made homeless this year because of loss of funding for their rent support. And at this point, I'd say maybe 1 in 4, 1 in 3 people who's actually eligible for this type of support is getting it. So we've already got a bit of a crisis, which could get worse in the coming year. We have had higher interest rates. I think we're all expecting a cut sometime, maybe while we're talking. But I think it's probably 1/4 point. It'll help a bit.
This just in, the rates are still high. Please continue.
So we have all of that sort of out there. That being said, there is a little bit of good news on the rental side. I think the efforts that initially started under the Biden administration to break up some of the price fixing in rentals may be having a little bit of a salutary effect. They're at least fairly stable. They're not going up. You've got some decrease in the rate of increase in the value of existing homes. So sale prices won't be rising quite as fast, at least on existing homes. There may be more homes for sale. At some point or another, the baby boomers are going to have to give up the big houses. They haven't yet. Some of us gave them up a long time ago and moved into apartments, but some baby boomers are still holding on to their houses. Gradually, that housing stock has to come into the market, but those folks need a place to go, and that generally means apartments and affordable housing. So there's a bit of a tie up there. And there is a general expectation that construction spending will be decreasing both commercially and residential because of the cuts in the support programs from the federal government. HUD is not supporting nearly as much housing construction as they were. That said, cities and states like New York, California, Illinois are continuing to put money into housing and continuing to push for better housing programs. My own, and my personal opinion is that we need a redo of the post-World War II housing construction program. We need major federal intervention into those markets in the forms of lower interest rates and incentives to get more housing built where it's needed. But that's a national sort of political issue. And as you point out all the time, we don't do politics.
Yes.
So
So
that's
we'll put that
that's where we
aside.
sit.
Let's talk about housing prices. What are you seeing right now? Do you see continued growth, stabilization, price
I would
corrections?
call it stable to maybe slightly higher.
Hmm.
But I'm talking like 1%. I'm not talking big numbers. And I think the falling interest rates, because there is a projection for about another half to 3/4 of a point over the next 12 months. Exactly when it happens,
I mean,
you know,
broadly, I see 1.7% prices higher year to year in the last few years, but it depends on where you live. But that's broadly on an average with the in the country.
I think it's going to be a little lower on the average in the country. Some of the high market areas like San Francisco or Honolulu may stay up. New York has its ongoing problems, although New York has been, pretty intensively working on housing by attacking some of the zoning issues, trying to increase density around transit hubs, trying to reduce the ability of neighborhoods to kind of NIMBY on housing, and also, and I think very intelligently dispersing different types of housing in mixed neighborhoods so that we no longer have this, we try to put all of the affordable housing one place and all of the low income housing, and we found that failed. So we now have more mixed neighborhoods, which are more successful.
And I see that in my area where they where some families are subsidized by the government, they're next to people that are paying full freight rent.
Correct.
They're all integrated in together. Uh,
And that makes for a better, healthier community. It makes for a healthier school system. It makes for better community services. That's a better way to do it than kind of trying to isolate people and create sort of economic sleeves.
what do you think about for the buyer or even the seller? What kind of economic indicators should they be watching most closely now?
Well, interest rates, number one.
Sure.
That's absolutely number one. Number two, what's going to happen with pricing if the Supreme Court does, as many observers expect, including, of course, me, that the IEEP tariffs will not survive. But I think the price increases generally will, unfortunately. So and the continuing effort to deport undocumented workers here, with before this started, 1 in 5 construction workers was undocumented. And that's a problem. We need to figure out our labor force. We really need to deal with our immigration situation, even if it's just work permits, so that people can come here for temporary periods of time to hold jobs and go home. But we need to address this problem because we need labor. I mean, the U.S. workforce is becoming more and more technically proficient and more service oriented. That transition has been going on really since the 50s. And though there is a current effort to try to change that, I think the momentum is way beyond a single administration's ability to really change that momentum. And so I think that transition will continue. So we're going to need some kind of infusion of blue collar labor.
You mentioned construction. I know, and I'm on Long Island. You're in New York City, east end of Long Island, the Hamptons. I've heard of from friends who know builders out there that they build, multi-million-dollar homes. We're talking 6-7 mil. One in particular, I heard he's hanging on to 4. He's got 4 sitting there, built and ready to go. Nothing happening. Another builder is selling his business, I think, for around $6 million. Just the name, the reputation, all of that, just because they're at a standstill in terms of buying, maybe workers, supply chain. What do you think is going to happen there? I mean, I'm just isolating one part of the country, but is building construction going to stay the way it is? Do you think it might increase?
One of the most important things to understand about the construction industry is that it has one of the lowest barriers of entry of any business. So, if you want to set up a big computer operation, you need to buy power, you need to buy equipment. You have real barriers of entry. You have to get skilled workers. With construction, the barriers of entry have always been lower. And there has been a national policy to both keep them low and raise them, depending on whether you're the consumer advocate trying to improve the product for the consumer, or you're the small business advocate trying to increase the amount of small business. So we've got low barriers of entry. We've never had a problem with startup companies, and I'm sure we won't at some point. There is also a cycle in these companies in which they start out building for others, then they build for themselves, then they become developers and investors. Right now, the high interest rate environment and the labor issues and the pricing issues have made this business more difficult. And it looks like it will continue to be difficult in 26, suggesting that there's going to be some consolidation. But the construction industry will come back, and there will be new businesses, young people trying again, simply because of the low barriers of entry.
Well, that being said, it's about demand. So it doesn't make sense to build something unless you know somebody wants to buy it. So is the demand there? Can they afford it? And then certainly on the building side of things, building apartments. That seems in my area, that's what's going on. Shopping center that I grew up going to slowly started eroding. Businesses were leaving there. The last one to leave, and this is in the last couple of weeks. You know which one it was? The U.S. Post Office.
Yeah.
I guess logistics and all of that. They moved it to another location. Now I'm hearing within the next month or so, the whole thing's going to be leveled. It's big, pretty big area. And that's going to be housing. Not affordable, just more housing, apartments and such.
Well, we have to look, there is a demand for affordable housing, and you can sort of range affordable housing. It doesn't have to just be people who need support or are
government assistance
or starter homes.
Sure.
You have young lawyers who have, good six-figure salaries that will be going into these kinds of affordable units for as a first buy. It might not be their last buy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the market for these very high-end large homes is right now because of the interest rate situation and the cost. And it may be that people are just sitting on their money and they don't want a second or third home. And that could be part of the problem. And it may loosen up if the interest rates drop a little bit. But these builders have to recover their costs. And if they were building through this period in 25, when prices were going up, they have to recapture those costs somehow. And if their labor force if they're having problems with their labor force and having to spend more on labor, they're going to have to recapture those costs as well. So we have some interesting issues here with the high-end homes as well.
Hey, now we mentioned government. Let's go to government policies. Which policies, potential regulations could have the biggest impact in the housing market, buyers, sellers in 2026?
From a national perspective, the Trump administration's basic policy of reducing government spending in the housing area for supportive grants and supportive housing is going to have a negative impact. Also, the less money available from government subsidized loans will also act as for downward pressure. In some areas, as I noted at the beginning, like New York, where there's a lot of government state money and local money coming in, and state and local incentives coming in to try to stimulate housing, it may counteract, and the lower interest rates may help a bit. And if the tariffs are wiped out and the price pressure is at least relieved to a degree, then they only have to contend with the labor force issue. And contractors have always been pretty clever at dealing with labor force issues. And, over time, we're going to get more, the labor is going to get more productive because we're going to help them with more robotic type tools. That hasn't come online as fast, but it's coming too.
Interesting. Never thought of it looking that way in terms of, AI is everywhere.
AI is everywhere.
Robotic building a house using robots. Whoa.
Well, partly,
yeah.
doing certain kinds of repetitive tasks in which, a skilled person with the computer or on site is, managing the robot. But there have been some projects already with some robotic elements. And, there's more and more experimentation, both in the United States as well as Europe and China. And there's also new improved technology for managing projects. One in particular, where that's coming out of Europe, which is a fascinating concept in which daily it sweeps all the information on these projects and allows the managers to see where things are going off track immediately. If anyone wants any more details on this, email me and I'll give you more details. But
it's fascinating. It's intriguing. Look at cars. They're all built by robots.
Cars are easier to do by robots.
Sure.
On a production line, and it's a more contained area that can be more easily observed and managed. But there are certain kinds of tasks, such as installing certain kinds of glass panels. If the setup is correct and the measurements are good, the robots can just do it. Difficulty we've had has always been the complete lack of precision. But with the BIM, the three-dimensional modeling programs, and these improved measurement techniques and improved ways to manage these projects to get more precision, it becomes easier and easier to automate aspects of the work.
Let's look at state situations. We focused on New York for a little bit. Let's go to Florida, where I'm hearing property taxes may be going away. I thought I heard that, or one of the states, but I thought it was Florida. What are you hearing, and what's the impact going to be?
Well, that is less about housing and more about how government is funded. There are arguments going back and forth about how dependent you should be on the property tax. I mean, Bloomberg, when he was mayor in New York City, Mayor Bloomberg was a person who thought it was important to be more dependent on the property tax than the income tax because it was more stable. So New York City residents are paying property taxes comparable to those on Long Island, plus a 6% income tax, which is pretty high. So the taxes in the city are high.
Mm-hmm. And
there's a sense that, and there's litigation actually about the whole property tax scheme in New York City. We won't go into that. That's a show that would take us 3 hours. And no one would want to hear.
Yeah, well, way out of my wheelhouse.
I could talk about it a little bit, but I don't want to. But that's a whole other set of issues. So that's really a state. How does the state want to fund itself? And some states are trying to reduce dependence on the property tax. Some are looking to increase dependence on the property tax, depending on what their particular situations are and their politics. I mean, look at California. They're still living with Prop 13 from like 30 years ago, which has skewed the taxes in California in very odd ways that suggest that this might not have been the best plan of all time.
Well, looking at Florida and some potential changes down there, yeah, we are talking about housing 2026 right now, but you look at no state tax, now no property tax. Where do you want to buy a house?
Well, the question is the fees. I mean, that's part of the problem in California. It's because they can't do much with the property tax because of the Prop 13. They have all of these fees, and that gets to be problematic too. I mean, are you like New York and you just tax people, or do you try to do it with fees, which are to amount to a user tax? These are policies.
It gets mucky. And then of course in Florida, look at the if you're in a condo complex, the homeowners association fees, insane. Just, just for fun.
That's actually Florida's taken an interesting approach, and I'm not entirely in disagreement with what Florida's tried to do. They're trying to force condominiums to actually have real reserve funds. So they do maintenance. They don't want another building collapse like they had in Surf City.
Gotcha. Okay.
New York, and some of the banks are pushing it in New York, which has had impacts in New York on some, mostly co-ops, because condos, the loans are usually to the unit owners, and the co-ops, they're oftentimes to the building as a whole. But there's a lot of pressure on to get reserves in these buildings for maintenance purposes. And, depending on where you are in the ownership cycle, you may or may not approve of that policy, but that's yet another policy that's out there.
And of course, homeowners insurance, in Florida through the roof. Yeah, somewhat
Everywhere.
Obvious reasons. Yeah.
Everywhere, though.
Mm.
New York has seen a significant increase, and part of the reason, in my opinion, is that the building department has allowed developers to damage adjacent properties at will. And this is creating all sorts of insurance claims. This is not a good thing. This is a bad thing. And New York City should be doing a much better job of blocking these careless developers from damaging adjacent properties.
So
there needs to be a look at that issue on the insurance side.
I want to look at advice. So let's look at this for buyers. As we wrap up here, encapsulating it, 2026, somebody's thinking about buying a home. What would you tell them?
I would tell them to buy a fixer-upper. Don't pay the premium for the best home in the neighborhood or fancy finishes. Get a home that is structurally sound. Maybe it needs decoration. Don't worry about the yard. You can always fix the yard. You can put sweat equity into the yard. Focus on where you can get structural soundness, good plumbing, good sewage removal, quality utility services, and then take your time and improve the house as you need to. That's what I would.
And I see that because I was looking about buying again, but that's what I look at. And I see back in the day, like I would never even touch that. But now looking at it, it's like, what? Seems kind of reasonable if you have the right people to pick from to do the work. Maybe you have friends who are contractors, they can cut you a break, whatever, or you can do some of the work yourself. What a difference in price, though. Like sometimes.
Well, and the other thing is there are all sorts of clever little things you can do to keep prices down. For example, let's assume you buy a starter home with, say, 2.5 bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Don't buy all different tile for all the bathrooms. Make it all the same tile. It saves money. You're only buying one tile. You only need one attic stock. You only need one color grout. There are all kinds of little things you can do if you're doing it yourself. I mean, you may have the tile guy lay the tile, but if you're thinking it through, there are little tricks you can do. Get a very nice bathroom, get 3 nice tiled bathrooms, just the same tile.
Yeah. Buying discount because you're buying a lot of them. Final question here. That's for the buyer. Advice for the seller, 2026.
How you price is going to matter. How you play the interest rate game is going to matter. And how you present the property. So while I'm telling the buyers to buy not such great properties, I'm telling the sellers it still pays to stage. A coat of paint, yes. Brand new bathrooms, maybe not, but clean them. So staging matters. Watching your pricing, watching the comparables. I mean, actually doing research, and don't overpay for brokers. I mean, there's just no reason to be paying 6% brokerage commissions anymore.
Yeah, totally. What are you hearing now? I'm hearing like 4%, somewhere around there.
Yeah. I mean, it's coming down, and it's going to continue to come down.
Always great talking with you. Love the insight. And like it's construction litigation is your forte. But
Yes.
you look at everything, including the housing industry. And I know we've mentioned it from time to time here and there, but I'm glad we dug into it. Full force today because it's almost 2026. People are talking about it. It is such a big chunk of change, even when you're paying rent. If anybody's got a question for you, how do they find you?
Carol.Sigmond, Sigmond @gmlaw.com. And I answer my emails.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here again today, Carol.
Thank you, Steve, and happy holidays.
Hey, you too. We'll talk soon. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Let's go inside the mind of a 10-year-old.
I should have worn those earrings today. I like those earrings. Gabby has those awesome earrings. I need to ask her where she got those, but that's just what she would want me to do. I'll have Michaela ask her for me.
Buckle up, Sarah.
Yeah, but then Michaela will be like, why don't you just ask her yourself? That's just like Michaela.
Sarah, buckle up.
Michaela's such a great name. I wish I was called Michaela. There's like a dozen Sarahs in my class.
Hey, we're not hitting the road until you buckle up, honey.
Oh yeah, seatbelt. I forget sometimes because my brain is like busy, you know? I wonder if there's pizza at school today.
Sometimes it can be tough to get through to your kids, but it's not impossible. Always make sure they're wearing their seatbelts, even on short drives. Remember, you have the keys, you have the power. Never give up until they buckle up. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. Visit safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup for more information.